Daddy, we're doing.
I'm doing a podcast, Dizzy. Hello, welcome to the Too Cool for School podcast. I'm your host, Yannick, and on today's episode, we'll be discussing a theme, a topic that impacts so many people, but sometimes it has a bit of stigma around it and people don't like to talk about it too much, but it's something that, whether it's impacted you directly or it's impacted someone that it's a topic that we're really going to break down and get to the crux of it this day, and that topic is gambling. And I've got a special guest with me today who I'll allow them to introduce themselves.
Hello everyone, salutations, my name is Ryan Taylor Hines. I work for an organisation called BetKnowMore UK, which is a national gambling harm support service, and I run a project called Breaking the Cycle.
Okay, great stuff. So, we're going to get to the crux of it. When we talk about gambling, what is gambling? Is it the same sort of idea that many of us think of, like when we see people going into the bookies and the Paddy Powers and the Corals and the casinos and the Bet365 football stuff? Like what is gambling? Is there like a universal acknowledgement or idea of what constitutes gambling?
So it's funny because we go straight to those kind of our lived experience and the things that we've seen. But the definition of gambling is the staking of something of value on a circumstance, something of chance to which you do not know the outcome, with the hope of gain. So it could be staking anything of value on something where you don't know what's going to happen, hoping that something positive or something is going to come back off the back of that. So obviously things like what you mentioned, the bookies on the high street, but the game's completely changed with people now engaging with it on their phones. And then you have gaming, the metrics of gambling, which is in gaming, the metric of gambling, which is in consumerism today, things like TikTok, things like Instagram, things like giving gifts, all of these little bits and bobs.
Giving examples, like how are the metrics of gambling in like gaming and consumerism?
Right. So, for example, within gaming, one of the biggest games on the phone at the moment is called Coin Master. So, few of the people listening might know what Coin Master is. Coin Master is a game that utilizes the metrics of the roulette wheel and the importance of staking your coin that you've either bought with your real money or it's like a fiat currency within the game to stake down on a roulette wheel. Off the back of that, you're basically trying to gain more weapons or more influence or more land to help you within the game. So they literally utilize the metric of the roulette wheel and the whole metric of gambling to help you through the game. And you can't excel in the game unless you gamble. So that's one of the ways that could be.
And how about in consumerism?
So in consumerism, we're talking at the moment with loads of people about gifting. So for example, I don't know if you've seen these people. I don't know how popular it is now, but I remember when I first looked into TikTok, people on live will be like, oh, I would do X, Y, and Z, or I would give X, Y, and Z if you give this amount. So it's almost like staking something of value. You've put your real money into your TikTok account. You've then staked like a heart or whatever it is, and that then gets that person to do something for you or some kind of prank or some kind of foolishness online, which will then obviously give you your element of, oh, I made my man do whatever, or I made my girl do whatever. So that staking of something of value on the hope of getting something in return in some way. That might be social, that might be something you might actually receive as a reward, a prize from that TikToker. Or it can be just the social status of saying, yeah, I dropped that on that person and look what I received as a result of that. So that can be another metric as well within gambling.
So essentially, like, we engage in gambling like behaviour every day.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yeah. And do you think people realise when they're engaging in gambling like behavior?
I would say it's never been so murky. It's never been so obscure, because we have an ancient or an older way of understanding what gambling actually is. So if you're not going to the bookies and you don't have Bet365 on your phone, which is, or a variety of different things on your phone, you might not think that you're engaging in that habit. But yeah, as I said, with the metric being in so many different places, even as small as, like, I don't know if you've ever seen those little toys that everyone has on their bags. I forget the name of them, like furries or something like that. But the whole concept of like buying a box, a mystery box, you don't know what's inside of it. Are you going to get the same one as you've already got? Are you going to get the golden standard thing? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Open that up. Oh, it's the gold one, but I wanted the silver one, platinum, with the different hairstyle. Like all of those things. So yeah, we're all engaged in it in some way, shape or form, whether we're aware of it or not. And it's in everything from you watching football with your brethren and saying, nah, man, you want to, it's even on the advert now, right? Do you want to bet? Like all of these types of things is the heart of gambling metrics. Everything from penny up the wall, like what we used to play in secondary school, to what the kids are doing today.
No, that's interesting. And what's the most common form of gambling? Obviously, we've spoken a lot about sports and like online betting, but how does it compare to, for example, like bookies and roulette or casino? Like, what's the most
So the
common?
most common form of gambling is the lottery. Right, so the lottery and scratch
I've got family
cards.
members that have been gambling for a long time.
Right. So that's another one we don't even think about because it's so ingrained in our society. It's everywhere. It's advertised all the time. It's really interesting that gambling is the only 18 plus product that is advertised 24/7. So from the time you wake up in the morning to the time you go to bed at night, it's always advertised in all different shapes and sizes. So Omaze as well. Omaze, I don't know if you've seen the adverts for Omaze. You stake a little £15 entry or £20 or £30 or £100, £500 down because you're trying to get a house that's worth 1.2 million. That's another one where they've tried to get more middle class women to get into gambling because they realized that they were a demographic that wasn't gambling as much.
So then, what's the difference between the narrative of something like the lottery in comparison to, like online football betting that makes it like where you can look at online football betting and be like, oh, you know what? Like if you keep doing that, you're at risk of, like going into like an addictive habit and whatever else. But the National Lottery is advertised as this sort of, before you watch a little 7 p.m., whatever's on ITV or BBC, oh, do this. And it's like a family type, thing.
Activity.
Like, what is it about the narrative behind that? If we're linking back to what you were saying before about staking something of value to receive something, that intrinsically it's the same thing. But what is about the narrative that is shared or depicted so differently?
It's interesting because people think that, for example, if you do have that Paddy Power app on your phone, you're more likely to be affected by gambling harm than if you have if you love to buy scratch cards. But the reality is that we've got as many people addicted to scratch cards and the lottery as we do somebody who can't help but place a bet when they're watching a sports game. So these things the line is so fine and it will be dependent on the person, their cultural background, what's acceptable in their spheres, what's acceptable in their world. Because some people are engaging with gambling from they're 6 years old and some people have very little access to gaming or gambling at all. They might have gone to a bingo hall with their grandma once or twice, do you know what I mean? And they're in their 40s and some people have been engaged with it from such a young age. So it will just depend on the cultural kind of nuances that play a part in that and how deeply somebody is drawn to that by their surroundings, their environment and what's gone on in their life.
So speaking about culture, like what's the demographic of people that you've seen often impacted by gambling? So both in terms of age,
Yeah.
gender, ethnicity, like what does that look like?
So the most common person, as most people would maybe presume, to be negatively impacted by their gambling behavior or affected by gambling harm would be men, predominantly in their between 25 and 50, 60 is really like the age group that are most impacted by gambling harm. And obviously people are like, oh, well, that's what I would expect. And then we're in Britain, so Englishmen are more likely to experience gambling harm than anybody else in the nation. But the reason why my project exists is because research has shown that although people from black or minoritized communities are less likely to gamble than their white counterparts in the UK, when they do, they're more likely to experience harm. So the disparities are there in the same way that they're there in so many different other spheres due to, cultural stigma, shame, economic background, cultural, all the cultural nuances that play a part in the process as well.
And when you say gambling harm, what do you mean by that for those who are listening and have picked up on that? Like, what do you mean by gambling harm?
So gambling harm is when you are negatively impacted by your gambling behavior, either your physical health, your mental health, your finances, your relationship, your mood. If it's negatively impacting any level of your life, any sphere of your life, we would say that person is experiencing gambling harm. And would then go into the kind of conversation or the dialogue around addiction, which is a massive part to play. So for example, my organization is not anti-gambling, but we do exist to fight and tackle the harms that come with that. Because people don't realize, bro, that it impacts so many different elements of the human life when people are negatively impacted by their own gambling behavior or the gambling behavior of somebody that they love. We would call those people affected others.
Affected others, yeah, that's important. And I feel, like from my own experience and like from when, like in the past I've betted online, and I've been doing like online, sports betting, whether it's like football or NBA, for example, and I love basketball, but I would often find myself like, you've got a bet on, you're watching the game, but you're not even paying attention to the game.
Involved, right?
You're not involved. You don't even care if your favorite team wins.
Right.
Like there's a player that you don't even know, and you're like, yo, I need this guy to get 10 points, 5 rebounds. Otherwise, you've messed up my, you know what I'm trying to say? You've messed up my bet slip.
Accumulator or whatever it is.
And I'm like, yo, damn, like this is crazy. Like you're up in the middle of the night.
Yep.
Like all of a sudden you turn into some researcher looking at the last 5 games, like how many did they get? And you're like, oh yeah, you know what? Like I'm close. And then you lose, and then you keep that, cycle. Or even when there's been times when, and I'm not the only person, and I've got many friends who have done this before, like you're online, you're literally betting like Indian Premier League, man.
Imagine that.
Like Indian Premier League, you don't even know what,
So common.
you don't even know like what this team is. You've never heard of them, but it's like, you're just like, you know what, I need that win back. I need that win, I need that W, I need to get that streak. And often for those who experience that high of having to win,
Yes.
it gets you excited, it builds that adrenaline. Oh, like I've won this one, so I can win the next one, or I'm so close. And then you start to think of all the bills you're going to pay and the credit cards that you're going to clear off and all of these things. And you get into a cycle, and it needs, crazy discipline, to be able to hold back. And I wanted to ask as well, in terms of the types of gamblers, so I'm someone that I could do 10 different bets and £5 stake on each of them, and I've spent £50.
Right.
And because I'm like, oh, you know what, I'm not going to do more than 5.
Right.
But I've done 10 different ones, and it's £5 max. And I've got friends who are like, yeah, no, this one, just put 50 on that. And I'm like, yo, just going to build 50 on that. What is it about the different mindsets that means that there are people who are more sort of risk adverse and like, oh, you know, I'm just going to put a little 5 in that. And then there's people that 50, 100, 500, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, is it an addiction to gambling? Is it something more intrinsic? Like, what is it?
So you touched on a few things there that got my head going, because I talk about this day in and day out. One of the things that you mentioned was like, what is the person actually addicted to? And I think when you start having this conversation, you realize that it isn't about greed alone. It isn't just about the money alone either. It is actually they get addicted to the dopamine hit released for the expectation of winning or losing, right? Which is really fascinating. The brain is actually getting addicted to that. What could it be? That could it be feeling is what people actually get addicted to. Same reason why people doom scroll. Same reason why people watch dead soap dramas is because of that, like, dum, 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 dum. It's that, like, what's going to happen next? I'm going to stay up all night long watching Netflix, you know, brother, because they've left it on a cliffhanger. It's exactly the same. Actually, what they say is that the same dopamine release from a heroin addict is the same for a gambling addict. So the same things are taking place in the brain when these things are going off. You also asked about risk aversion and people who, you know, high risk, high stake type individuals. And what the research points towards is people who have had what you would have called ACEs or adverse childhood experiences are a whole lot more likely to have that risky kind of link, as well as, for example, somebody who's going through a bereavement, somebody who's going through difficult experiences in their life, are trying to find some kind of coping mechanism, some way to escape. And the thrill that gives, people are more likely to stake higher bets or to stay further and go longer. And you man are leaving the casino at 2, I'm staying till 5 because I need to. All of these different things are undergirded by all of these kind of background drops of everything from learning difficulties to neurodiversity, to people who have been in high risk, high stake environments, like people who work in emergency services or the armed forces or sportsmen and women. Like, so all of these things basically create like almost the backdrop to why people might be more or less risk averse to these situations.
That's interesting. So when did I first? I can't remember when I first started like gambling. I think, you know, I went to the bookies with one of my boys, and I think it was like Ladbrokes or something like that.
On the strip.
Yeah,
There's so many in the ends as well, right?
That's what I'm trying to say, man. You put £10 on zero. You're just like £10 on zero, 360. I said, what? That was it? £360. I said, damn, yo, this is
gone,
crazy.
because you think that's going to be
10
you.
seconds. That's
right,
10 seconds.
Right.
Boom, press, collect. And I was like, yo, this is crazy. And
did you end up staking that? Did you leave with your winnings?
Nah, I'm sure I did a little something. I can't remember. Like, it was bits and bobs. But I've been able to, like, again, because of experiences with money, I've been able to, like, even if like I've gambled in the past and like I experienced a certain amount of losses, that for me is bad.
Right.
I can like, I'm like, oh, I've lost 2 bills this month, and I'm like, F that. But they're staking 2 bills easily. Yeah. But I'm like, nah, that 2 bills, I'm not gonna sleep for the next 3 months.
100.
Because, you know, I'm thinking about that, and I've had the discipline even over the last couple of years. Like, if I do a little, you know, something, because I do feel that dopamine that you was talking about. Sometimes I'm like, oh, let me just. But then if I feel like it's a bit peak, you know what? 6 months self-exclusion, man, I'm good. I don't need it.
That's good. That's good.
What makes it an addiction? When does it become an addiction? Like, what's the threshold? What's the criteria of like an addiction? And how can someone realize, or can people realize?
Yeah. So there's a whole heap of signs along the way that don't usually get picked up. We call it something of like a continuum. So you can go from safe, which is from time to time I'll put a bet down on something, to regular, every week or every other week I'm gonna engage in this activity in some way, shape or form. And then you have problematic, where it's starting to have some kind of negative impact on your life in some way, shape or form, right? You shared about watching the NBA. Well, we know that that's over in the States. You got to stay up at a certain time to do that. And then you said like the thrill of putting the bet down, but then also you're losing love for the game as well. But then what if you lose a whole heap of money? How does that then impact your mood, your engagements with your partner, your youth, all of these little things that are starting to take it. So we would say once it gets to that point, it's starting to get to a problematic state, because you're now chasing your losses is the terms that we use. Like, I've lost that, I got to get that back because that was for X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And then it goes from problematic to what we call pathological. And this habit is formed exactly the same way as any other habit is formed. I like to share in my workshop about he's now 3, but when my son was 2, him learning to kiss his teeth. Yeah, he's now showing it off because he's 3 years old. But I'm now a pathological teeth kisser. Yeah. It's in my culture, it's in my world. If I stub my toe, something annoys me. If something's going on that's annoying, that's frustrating me, I'm gonna kiss my teeth, because my brain has learned that when something happens that annoys me, I've stubbed my toe, the physical release that my brain chooses is to kiss of the teeth, and then the reward of that is me expressing to the room or to myself or to make somebody laugh. I'm going to release that, and then the cycle continues. And so in the same way, somebody can now become, I don't think about kissing my teeth now, bro. It just comes out of me. It's cultural. Yeah. It's whatever. The same way that habit was formed for me, it could be the same for somebody who, actually, I just stake a little bread on this game with my friends. It's brought an element of a thrill to it. So the cue is that the game was on. Let me stake something is the response of the brain, and then the reward is either the dopamine release from could it be, and then that cycle continues until it becomes something that you're not even thinking about anymore. It's just part of you. It's like drinking water in the morning. It's like brushing teeth. It's like kissing teeth. These types of things are going to happen regardless, because you've got to that point now where your brain is now in autopilot.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And I wanted to know as well, why has gambling become so normalised, especially in like youth culture and amongst like young men? And I'm thinking about, when I think about me and some of my friendship groups, like a weekend can't go by where you're watching the football and the WhatsApp group is got, put £10 on yellow for this guy. And you just can't have a football match without there being a bet of some sort, being like flung in there. Like what's changed there?
I think that access. So back in the day, if you was gambling, you'd have to be in the bookies to do that. With access of it being on your phone, it's changed the landscape of gambling, because you can now be anywhere in watching anything, and there's always going to be some kind of platform that will allow even people watching traitors, bro, even people watching whatever their favorite TV show is or competition, you can stake a bet down on that if you have the right platform. So I think that's one of the things that's changed and made it so alluring. But I think also the socio-economic situation of our nation right now. Do you know what I mean? Like since 2008, we bailed the banks out, all of this nonsense taking place. And so it's harder to come by money now than it ever has been. Or to, cost of living, all these types of things mean that like you need to figure out some kind of way, bro. Everyone's got a new scheme out to a side hustle here, this, there. And it's just another, unfortunately, it's considered another side hustle. Like, we all need bread.
yeah.
So this is this is one of the ways to do it. Although we have things like the old saying, the house always wins. And they literally do always win, do you know what I mean?
That's interesting. Yeah, I wasn't thinking about the sort of social economic impact that people might be experiencing, because they, you know, people could be down to their last 20 and be like, what am I going to do with this last 20?
It feels like an investment, bro.
I could lose it. But like you said, this also is an investment opportunity.
Right.
You know what I'm trying to say? Like you would with any other investment opportunity. Like, you put your stake down, you're taking a risk of it might pop or it might not.
Right.
And I guess people see that investment opportunity and say, you know what, if I put this down and, you know, this is a 50-1 bet slip,
Yeah.
like, I'm up.
100.
Up.
But also, it's the
trying to say?
braggadocious element of it as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
If you're the one guy who's made, I don't know, 5 bags off a little accumulator that you did with £20, then you're the man.
Yeah, 100%.
But the thing is, a lot of the time, if you're that deep into gambling, then chances are you've lost a whole heap more than that over time.
No one says
No one
the
says their
losses,
losses, bro. Nobody
like,
does.
I've been in these WhatsApp group and I'm like, nah, big you up on the win,
Yeah.
but surely I can't be the only one losing.
Right.
Like, surely I can't be the only one losing, but no one, you know, no one shows
not cool
their
to
losses.
lose.
Not
Right.
publicly,
No,
you know, anyway.
No.
Not publicly.
Because it would be
anyway.
a shame, right? It would be a shame because
yeah.
the chances are the odds are against you every time. Otherwise, the industry wouldn't be worth 15 billion.
Yeah, no, 100%, man, 100%. And I wanted to know, like, what's, like, from what you have seen, like, what is the impact of, like, gambling harm on, like, you know, people's, like, mental health, family, you know, relationships, like, from the people that you've worked with?
Yeah.
Like, what does that look like?
The how can I put this, man? The levels to which it can destroy a life are like non-ending, bro.
Well,
Obviously there's a massive link between suicide and gambling harm. Not only is there that, but it's the hidden addiction, right? So somebody could be down on their lonesome, on their last whim, suffering with gambling harm, and you wouldn't be able to see it in the same way you might do with alcoholism or substance misuse, because you can see that. Do you know, it's easier to see than gambling harm or gambling addiction. Obviously, because of some of the telltale signs that I didn't actually answer your question fully, but things like lying, like there's a correlation between people thinking their partner's cheating when actually they have a gambling addiction, because they don't want to, they've all of a sudden become very secretive about their phone, what's on their phone,
they got all
their
them apps.
transactions, where have you been all night, or did it, like we've got adult gaming centres on the high street that are 24 hours, bro, free Wi-Fi, food, all, do you know what I mean? It's like a whole experience now. So it has its massive knock-on effects. We have so many, the pleasure of working for my organization is that most of the people who work for our organization have lived experience, either directly or as an affected other. So we've been there, done it, wore the t-shirt in some way, shape or form. From my own experience, the first proper relationship I was ever in when I was 15 years old. And it's so funny because when you talk about this, you don't want to like heat people up, do you know what I mean, and share it publicly. But the reality is due to a gambling harm problem in that family, there was a dispensation regarding their finances, that then led on to a whole heap of other issues that were relational. You know, I would see that family member come floss in one moment and everyone's getting gifts, and then the next moment I'm hearing that there's no food in the fridge, and this is within the span of a week. And then that leads on to other addictions. So we talk about cross addictions in our sphere, because one addiction usually leads to another. And then you're drinking heavy, and then that can have emotional, mental health complications. Actually led to divorce and a disbanding of that family, unfortunately. And so, and stealing from family members, The list goes on and on and on and on in regard to how detrimental it can be, from the small drip to the flood.
Yeah. And when you've worked with those who you termed affected others,
Yes.
can you share a bit like what their main concerns were, like being like as part of that sort of relationship to the person that was gambling? So those who consider themselves like they affected others, like what were the main things that they would come to you or your organization to either like complain about or to raise as an issue?
So a lot of it is like taking on responsibility for this person's own, taking on responsibility for somebody else's responsibility in some cases. So how many times has this person had to bail this person out? You said you had money last week, but now you're coming and asking for me again. But you said it was going on a gas bill, but actually you've just spunked it again. What do I do with this circumstance? Like the lying thing, the lack of funds, the knock people. I heard someone tell me yesterday about how they took out a £10,000 loan to get their parents out of difficulties, and the dad was a gambler. That got spunked as well through gambling. So these type of circumstances happen over and over again. Apart from the financial, you also have the neglect element, right? So we speak about mothers with gambling, affected by gambling harm, with their own gambling addiction, from all different cultures, experience, and their children are not getting everything that they need to in the way of emotional connection, in the way of they're absent, they're not getting food because of that need to gamble. So yeah, the list is crazy, bro. Obviously just not knowing if they can trust that person anymore, having to remove themselves, having to set certain boundaries in place which they find difficult to do because it's your family and they're in need, right? And also just feeling hopeless. Hopelessness is probably the thing that affected others speak of the most, because why can't you just stop? Do you know what I mean? But not understanding the science behind it, not understanding that where these things come from and the kind of psychological element to why, or the traumas and the experiences that have led onto that thing, and not having the tools to be able to address it. And then unfortunately some of the language that gets used negatively towards those who should be in recovery then only exacerbates the problem further for them, because now they feel like a burden on the family. I now feel like I already know I got a problem, for example, but now that problem's ruining my daughter's finances. It's ruining my cousin who's just come over, who's got some bread. I've had to ask him, whatever it is, bro. So it's multi-layered, fam.
No, that's so interesting. That's so interesting, and thank you for sharing in such detail. And you was talking about the experiences of the mothers, and you gave the example of the dad who was in debt, and the child had to take out a £10,000 loan. Do you ever find that gambling addiction and gambling harm, not necessarily the harm, but the addiction passes down through like generations? Like, is it a thing where if your granddad was a gambler, then the dad, is it things that it's passed down?
So culturally it can be passed down. And then there is a part of like genetics. For example, you might have bipolar in the family, you might have schizophrenia in the family. People with these mental health conditions are more susceptible to experiencing gambling harms than your normative person who doesn't have those things. But yeah, culturally it gets passed down. So for example, we had a man in our organization who worked for us for a substantial amount of time. He said that he was involved in gambling from 6 years old. He grew up in Essex, and his dad and his granddad and all of their friends used to congregate in his house weekly. They'd have the broad papers out and they'd be betting on the dogs and the horses, because there's a massive gambling culture within Essex and Raynham, because that's where the dogs racing is. So when he walked in one time, he's 6 years old, and he won't ever forget it. His granddad was like, "Come here, boy, put a bet down, like choose one of these dogs, whatever." He chose a dog, and the dog won.
Well,
He became the family's good omen.
mm,
So not only did he already, like, that was that interesting thing that his elders do, that he always wanted to be a part of, then he started to become the good omen in the family from 6 years old. So friends and whatever would be like, "Come over, like, choose a thing." And so he knew from 16, I think it was 16, is the time when he first got a job in the bookies, which he's obviously not old enough to do that. But he was just like, this is my life from that moment, because he was the family's good omen, because he put a few bets down. So, and that's a white family in Essex, but we have so many stories of in Asia and African and Caribbean families where similar, circumstances and nuances take place to allow people to think, that's my destiny. Do you know what I mean? To get the family out the hood, how am I going to do that, or whatever it is.
yeah. No, that's interesting. And I wanted to know, we've got organisations you see online when it comes to like safer gambling and whatever. They've got their whole, when the fun stops.
Yeah.
Is that enough? Are these organisations doing enough to manage and prevent the negative impact of gambling? And if not, what should they be doing if we're saying that, removing gambling is not an option? Like, what are the sort of things that they can be doing to sort of alleviate that?
So I know too many stories to say that organisations like Gamble Aware, for example, or GamCare, when people have called in on their helpline or whatever, massive things have been done. People's lives have been transformed by a phone call, that then led on them to them getting serious support. So it's good that we have that, but as you can tell, it's not enough. We chuckle about it because it's like, if when the fun stop is not enough, because there isn't enough education around it in the first instance, right? And when you're advertising to people 24/7 something that's supposed to be an 18 plus, we don't have that with pornography or alcohol or cigarettes or any of those types of things. But when it comes to gambling, it's constant, always at your door, and there's no negative element. I think that getting rid of gambling adverts as a whole would be a massive step in the right direction, because regardless, people are going to gamble. Advertising or no advertising, it only exacerbates it though, because it makes it seem like it's a viable thing, especially for people who can't always discern what's actually taking place in the advert is a manipulation, right? Everyone always winning. It's a vibe. You're going to become a billionaire. That's the rhetoric from this advertising. So I have a personal view. We should get the hell out of it. But I also feel like if you're going to advertise to people to that level, then we need to ensure that in schools, in colleges, in workplaces, in policies in workplaces, like what our organisation does to help people actually embed it into policy, for people to understand that there are support services out there, and just for us to generally have an understanding of when people are affected on this, where do you signpost them? Because we know that if someone was struggling with their mental health, you can send them to Mind or Samaritans, or there's a list, you know what I mean, that can come in, or someone's going through abuse, you can kind of know where to put them. But when it comes to gambling on, we don't know. Do you know what I mean? We just see that little thing in the bottom right corner that usually says Gamble Aware, or be safe or whatever, but we don't really know what that means in the same way as we do with other charitable organisations and support services.
No, that's true. And I wanted to know as well, as an educator, if you've spoken about the importance of educating people, doing that early intervention before it sort of kicks in, because from 18 plus you're accessible to be able to go and gamble and whatever else. Like what does early intervention look like? Like what does that education look like? What are the things that you would be teaching students about gambling, and how early do you think the intervention should start?
I think it should start from the end of primary school. And the reason why I'd say that is because the Gambling Commission did a bit of research on kids, young people, 11 to 17. 30% of 11 to 17-year-olds are using their own money on gambling already.
Damn.
Right? And then you got a whole heap of the young people as well who are engaging in gambling-like behavior through all these games that we were talking about earlier, that don't know that's what they're doing. So I think one of the things that could be done, we've got organizations like YGAM that schools can call on to ensure, just like you have schools have a responsibility, safeguarding people like yourself, have a responsibility to be upskilled on knowing where to signpost people when they're experiencing harm, but also to have all of the training necessary to educate and to bring in the right people to educate, because a lot of this stuff is for free, bro. Do you know what I mean? All of the workshops I do in the community is for nothing. But it's just access. It's just people being aware of those organizations and saying, come talk. Do you know what I mean? Come and embed your knowledge into our policies. Come and give us the skills and the know-how to know what to do when we see these things crop up in the families we're engaged with and the young people that we're talking to.
Yeah, no, that's key. And, it's great having, organizations like BetKnowMore. It's great having, people like you who are underground and doing that work, who, are skilled and knowledgeable in this area. But for those of us in the community, like parents, mentors, aunts and uncles, just our general guys in the community who don't have knowledge of that area, what can we do to educate and protect, our young people, protect our peers and our friends and those who we know that are experiencing, these things, rather than just stop doing that. You're wasting money, you've got kids, but how can we really educate and protect them?
So the first thing is just having an awareness yourself. It's choosing to, it's contacting, I don't want to just big up my thing, but it's contacting people who do work like what I do to receive that upskilling yourself. So you have everything that you need tool-wise. You know what resources to point young people to, because like you said, what's the alternative? It's great telling someone to stop, but when you don't know the self-exclusion tools that are out there, you don't know the science behind what's going on in the brain. You don't know where to signpost people to help them to utilize other healthy methods of coping mechanism to navigate all of the nonsense that they might be going through in their world. Utilizing all of this, I suppose, in many ways, the same way that you didn't when you come into work. We've both worked in secondary schools. We both worked in schools, yeah. You can say you've had training on county lines. You've had training most likely on substance misuse. You've had training on like how do you have that conversation with a young person if they're going down that road. All of these things are par for the course now. They never used to be, but they are. But I think embedding gambling harm awareness into those types of things are really important. And parents just being aware of what's accessible in the way of the information, familiarizing themselves with the content that's out there and the lived experience stories is a massive part of it, just so they can understand, okay, cool, like this isn't, and our language is the most important thing, really. How we talk about this, how we destigmatize this through compassionate, trauma-informed language is going to be a massive game changer, bro. Because the way that we currently talk about it and the way we stigmatize those in our community because of their addiction only exacerbates the situation further, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah. No, thank you. And I wanted to know as well, from the work that you've done, have you seen people recover from gambling addiction and gambling harm? If so, like what does that healing process looks like? What does it look like? And how long does it, how long does it take? Is it a a quick fix? Can it be done over the summer?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is there hiccups? What's often the obstacles? It'd be good to know what that
What that
healing
journey
process looks like.
Yeah, so like any addiction recovery program, you're gonna get some people who take to the content and take to the education and take to the lived experience and take to the community aspect like that. And as a result of a few conversations and engagement and motivation, and to realize they're not alone, all of these types of things for one person might mean that their recovery process doesn't have to take months and months or years. But then others, it's deep rooted, and they have to go through different processes. So for example, within BetKnowMore, we have a thing called Peer Aid, and another service called New Beginnings, which is specifically for women, and they take different cohorts of people. Everybody in that group will have lived experience, and they will take them through everything from one-to-one interventions, helping people understand like what other things you can be doing with your time, how to little coping mechanisms and skills and little just life skills on how to navigate life and navigate your loss and navigate your trauma in a healthy and safe way. And there's a variety of different ways in which they do that, and different things work for different people, different strokes for different folks. So those cohorts can last for 6 weeks. They can last for months. People go through. We actually we have a partnership with an organization called Gordon Moody, which is like a rehab treatment. So people leave where they are and go similarly as they would to if they had a substance misuse issue. They go and literally spend 6 weeks in a recovery space where they're getting one-to-one intervention. They're also getting group things like learning how to express themselves through art, learning how to talk about their problems, learning breathing techniques, learn all of these types of things you would be doing similarly for other addictions. The same things apply to gambling, which might sound silly to some people, but when you're addicted, you're addicted.
Yeah.
So that's that. You also have things like Gamblers Anonymous. So similar to Alcoholics Anonymous is the 12-step program.
Yeah.
So people can go on that online or in person. That's nationwide. You can find, support groups around the world. Same people going through the same thing as you, going through the 12-step program. Which looks different for different people and different things, and language works different. For example, we have people in our organization who are like, I recovered from my gambling addiction 12 years ago. Other people will say, I am an addict in recovery for 12 years.
Wow.
So it's so interesting how differently we all are and how that language can be utilized differently to help us through the process of recovery. It's not a one size fits all.
Yeah. And why do you think people don't talk about their addictions much, especially when it comes to like the gambling harm side of it? Like, what is it that keeps them, closed off or embarrassed? Like, what creates that shame and that stigma, which I think ultimately impacts them from seeking help?
I think that question is an amazing question, and there's so many different answers to them, but I would say that stigma and shame is instated by the community, right? So for example, in my conversations with people, my project focuses on London's black and minoritized communities, predominantly black, right? So one of the things that I've seen is, man, I idiot, look what he's doing with his money. Or I don't want to be like a waste of space, a waste of time. I don't want to be a waste man. I don't want to be a crackhead, even if they're not doing crack. One of the young people that a variety of young people who are like, if you're an uncle, if you're a black man and you're in the bookies, you're a crackhead. So all of these terminologies, all of this negative connotation that surrounds it only only creates a worse grounding for people who are already in it to seek to want to come out. I've also found that within our communities, I was in Brixton a little while ago, and our uncle come out of one of the bookies on the main strip, and we tried to talk to him about his gambling experience. Obviously, he didn't want to talk about it, but he said to me, he said something so profound to me. He said, "I'm not gambling." He's in the bookies, you know. He said, "I'm not gambling. I'm running the horses." And it was just screwing, man, bro. And I was just like, okay, like. And then we segued the conversation. And I was thinking, rah, this man has probably been in this space doing this activity for how long? And in his mind, he ain't gambling. Because gambling, when he screwed up his face after he said gambling, he was always like, that's a shame on my family to do that activity. I'm not gambling. I'm running the horses. As if the two are not the same thing.
Is this an extracurricular?
Yeah, it's almost like I'm with my people doing my thing.
Yeah.
And it just so happens to be running the horses, but that's not gambling in his head, even though he's probably a deep gambling addict. And so the concept of in his head, from what I gathered from what he said to me, was like, that's a shame. If that's dirty. Gambling's a dirty habit. It's a dirty activity from someone who's just come out of a place where gambling is taking place. Didn't even deem it to be gambling in his head. So it's definition, it's cultural nuances and shame that gets attached by the community. And then it's our inability to want to talk to one another or talk to GPs and healthcare providers about this problem because we don't think they're going to do nothing about it because we don't trust them. And really, we've learned to not trust one another with our vulnerabilities. Yeah. And that's deeper than gambling. That's a variety of different things.
No, that's powerful. That's powerful. And as we round up, I wanna circle back with my final question. You know, when we think about gambling, and, you know, I'm linking this to the point that you made at the beginning about gambling, you know, being this notion where you've got something of value which you stake, you know, in the hope of receiving, you know, some form of outcome that is benefiting yourself. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you've given examples where you've highlighted that, you know, sometimes gambling isn't always, sometimes there's not always a financial aspect. You know, to it. But we know in the community that we live in, and from what we're seeing, you know, online, social media, through betting apps, you know, the financial side of it is prevalent. Mm-hmm. So I guess my question is, you know, when we consider that, what is the focus of what we want to be teaching the next generation around gambling? Is it around how we manage money? Is it how we manage risk, or is it how we manage self-control? Like which of those three aspects would you say is the priority?
That's such an amazing question, bruv. That's the best question of the day. And I can tell you that you got your safeguarding hat on. In asking that question, and I can hear your care in asking it. I think that us helping to, because ultimately what we're seeing is it's how we manage our mental health, how we manage our identity among one another, how we manage our emotions, how we manage our trauma. And then, because that's like the base, and then I think, of course, all three of the things, the avenues that you just mentioned, to do a whole heap of work in, are all valid. Because if you do the first basis of kind of helping people understand their self and their self-control, that I think that's probably more the root. But sometimes, unfortunately, we don't have the time, we don't have the resources, we don't have the the presence to deal with or create the safe spaces as soon as possible. So it's almost like tiered. Ultimately, the deep root is with self and with teaching people to heal and to deal with the difficulties of life without going to destructive coping mechanisms. Then the next step would be financial awareness, like teaching people to be frugal, teaching people to be wise and to know what's the smart things to do with your resources, with your finances. And the last piece was what? What was your last?
Self-control, money or risk.
Yeah, I say risk and financial education are hand in hand. Because once you can deal with your own emotions and navigate your own the sometimes the madness that can go on within, then you can be better equipped to even listen to someone who can give you advice about what you do with that level of self-understanding, and then how that plays its part in your risk-taking activities and your finances. But it's interesting as well, right? Because you will. I think it was in your workshop that I went to where we're talking about, well, prior to being 25, your brain has even formed to make certain decisions. But we do know that the environments behind those things make it more likely that you're going to make those more risky decisions. So first the self, then the finances, and risky, I say, would be hand in hand in giving people that level of education to navigate that well.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. That's amazing, Ryan. Thank you for sharing. You know, this episode has been so insightful, and you know, just not only in terms of like my personal experience, but I can also say that, you know, I've got experience of being what was the word you called when someone else is when you've experienced
An affected other.
I've also got the experience of being, you know, an affected other, and this is something that I'm definitely, you know, going to share, you know, within my friendship groups, within my community, because it's something that, you know, is normalised and people see it as bad or whatever. And I can say out of my friendship groups, and there's so many people that I know who have gambled, but only one has ever come and really spoken to me about the gambling harm.
Wow.
To the point where we've had that convo, and I'm like...
But that's amazing, though, bro. They felt
like, bro,
safe
you know
enough to do that.
Yeah. And this conversation has made me realise that if they are able to come to me with that, and, you know, me and them have a relationship that they felt safe enough to do that, how many others are going through those experiences with no one to speak to, no one to lean on, no one for advice and guidance, and then going back to the source of which is causing them that, you know, harm. So, you know, this is an episode that I know that a lot of people are going to listen to acutely, not only in regards to like personal experiences, but especially as an affected, you know, especially as an affected other. And I'll make sure to, you know, to share all your socials so people can reach out to BetKnowMore, you know, find out more about, you know, the work that you and your organisation does. And thank you again, you know, for joining us. Yeah, it's been amazing.
Bro, thanks for having me, man.
No worries.
It's been a pleasure.
Great stuff. And that has been the Too Cool for School podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our YouTube page and follow us on all of our social media platforms. Thank you.